Hi everyone, what's up? It's Joshua here from Alternative Brewing, and today we're going to be doing a comparison of Easypresso grinders, and not the whole range, but a significant few hand grinders that make it into the top of our list for offering the best of what Easypresso has to offer. But before we jump straight into it, go ahead and smash that like button. And whilst you're there, you might as well go and hit the subscribe and the bell icon, and this gives us the nod that we're making the videos that you want to see, and we really appreciate it. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So the four grinders we will be comparing today are the Easypresso Q2, the JX Pro, the J Max, and the K Plus hand grinder. Now, straight up on paper, it's the J Max that comes out on top as that solid contender for the title. But that doesn't diminish at all the quality or the value that can be found in these other grinders. And as this is still a comparison video, it is much less about which of these grinders is the best, as Easypresso have also done a really good job at spreading the features out across all these grinders. And it's more about what particular combination of features will resonate with you and make your coffee grinding less of a chore, be more effective at grinding what you require it to do, and also be more enjoyable. Now, on a simple visual inspection of these grinders, they are a fair bit different. And how does this play out in the real world? And what are the advantages of one grinder over another? It is possible to choose one over another, and I will at the end of this video, but it's not likely that there will be one grinder to rule them all. It just doesn't work that way. Now, to begin with, the aspect that possibly separates these grinders quickly for most people is the precision and the range of the grinding output, or what brew methods they're each really good at grinding for. So we're going to start off by looking at the JX Pro and the J Max, which have the widest range of grinding combined with the smallest adjustments made between each grind setting. The JX Pro has a 0.0125 of a millimeter burr movement with each adjustment made, and the J Max has an astounding 0.0088 of a millimeter burr movement. And this factor produces hundreds of grind settings available across each of these grinders, and they'll grind for very fine Turkish coffee all the way up to the chunky cold brewing, and there is plenty of steps in between this complete range to be considered ideal for dialing in an espresso as well as filter coffee. Now, the J Max uses titanium coated burrs, meaning there's much less wear on these burrs that are constantly being used for grinding fine coffee, whereas the JX Pro uses a standard set of burrs, and these grinders, along with the K Plus, all use 48mm sized burrs. And if you pay special attention to the K Plus burrs, these are a special burr set that are only available in the K series grinders, and they've been designed for a variety of brew methods so they can equally grind for espresso and filter brewing. However, it's the grind setting adjustment on the K Plus that's twice the distance as the JX Pro and almost 3 times that of the JX Max, and the K Plus comes in at 0.022 of a millimeter. Now, you've probably noticed I've left the Q2 till last, and it's surprisingly underrated for its grinding performance. Perhaps it is something to do with its 38mm steel burrs versus those that use 48, but between its 90 usable grind settings, it still has that precision of adjustment at 0.025 of a millimeter per step, which is only 1/3000th of a millimeter difference to the K Plus. Given the difference in the burr size, you will notice less efficiency in grinding with that smaller burr set, as well as there being a much smaller window of grind settings for dialing in each brew method. Though I do still stand by my comment, it can grind fine enough for espresso, as it's not in everyone's bag of tricks to be dialing in a coffee to its ideal recipe. And perhaps you are just looking for a grinder that doesn't produce Niagara Falls when you're trying to pull a shot of espresso. Do expect a fair amount of effort to grind at a finer range with the Q2 versus its counterparts of the JX Pro, the J Max, or the K Plus. But my point is, the Q2 will grind for espresso like almost any hand grinder with metal burrs and a grind adjustment that can produce grounds say smaller than 200 microns. You just won't always have that option to tweak your grind setting by small margins if you are aiming to add or remove seconds off of your espresso shot. Otherwise, consider the Q2 capable as an all-round coffee grinder. Now, another feature that separates these grinders entirely is the grind adjustment mechanism. Found on the Q2, we have a wing nut adjustment, which is underneath the burr set, so you have to remove the catch cup and then keep that handle on to adjust the grind setting. Though this is a common design found on many hand grinders, And there are numbers, a marker, and audible clicks to each setting, so it makes it easier to track. Next, it's the JX Pro, and it has its adjustment inside the hopper, so it's a little easier to access with one less thing to do. It is also simple to make and follow adjustments, even with its small incremental changes. The settings click into place smoothly, and you just place the lid on to begin grinding. Now the K Plus has that grind setting mechanism as an adjustable collar around the outside at the top of the grinder. And this is a welcome design to hand grinders, as it's really easy to use and track your grind settings from the outside. And with only 1.5 full rotations of the dial, you go from fine to coarse. And for someone new to hand grinders, I think the K Plus adds that advantage of being the most effortless and intuitive to make grind settings with. Now, along with that, the J Max, of course, uses the same mechanism, but takes what the K Plus is good for and extends it a little bit further with extra rotations to its dial, as the increments are that much smaller in between each of the settings, and you track these rotations through a set of dots found underneath the adjustment ring, tracking the number of rotations that you're on. So let's now talk size and capacity of these grinders, as there's an obvious split here too. The Q2, I would say, lands in that category of really good travel grinders. It's lightweight for ease of travel. Its max capacity is 25 grams. That makes it compact enough that it will comfortably fit into a coffee travel bag, and it can also fit into the plunger of an Aeropress, which is a big bonus if that's your choice of travel brewer. And between the other three grinders, it's sort of neck and neck as they share similar dimensions. I guess the K Plus marginally wins out here with slightly more capacity and a lighter build, whereas the J series definitely have a more solid built structure to them. Each of these Easypresso grinders though uses similar materials through aluminium alloy, stainless steel and wood, and they all offer a premium feel to the manufacturing, which I have to say is superb, and it's found in the top of the line grinder and all the way down. Now, the Q2 and the JX Pro both use really well machined screw-on grinds catchers, whereas the K Plus and the J Max have magnetically attached grind catchers. And the noticeable difference here is that the K Plus has a quick release where you can pull the catcher off from any angle. Whereas with the J Max, you just can't do that, and you have to twist the catcher to break that seal and remove it. And this might annoy some people, but I think it's a great design to avoid it accidentally being bumped off. Next, looking at the accessories that come with each of the grinders, the JX Pro confidently just comes as is with a grinder brush, and this adds to its affordability. The Q2, knowing its capacity for travel, includes a travel pouch and a grinder brush. Next, the J Max comes with a slimline EVA carry case and a silicone sleeve to place around the body of the grinder. There's also a grinder brush and a blower for cleaning out the grinder. But it's the K Plus that easily wins out here, with a full EVA carry case that has loads of room inside for beans. You also get a grinder brush and a blower for cleaning out the grinder, as well as an alternative grinds catcher called a blind shaker. And this allows you to transfer grounds straight out of the bottom of the catch cup and dispersing those grinds evenly into whatever brewer you're using, which is especially helpful with espresso portafilters, as it has a tiered bottom to it as well, so it is compatible across many sizes of filter baskets. Now, as far as which one of these hand grinders ground the quickest, I think you can safely remove the Q2 from this equation, and it's going to be between the other three. And if I recall correctly, it was the K Plus that marginally won out here due to its Burr design, but I will add links to the individual videos where I do grind out a full dose in each of these grinders. Now, thanks to the precise measurements of the Burr movements provided by Easypresso across their full range, I went ahead and calculated 2 sets of grind settings, matching exact Burr distances in each of the grinders. So I used an espresso grind and also a medium grind setting that you would use for, say, Aeropress, and then I set about measuring the particle size distribution to compare how each of these grinders performed with their grinds. And this was done using Jonathan Garnier's app, which is a free download to use, and you can analyze the particle size distribution of coffee grounds. Also, a special mention to James Hoffman for shedding light on this really neat tool to use, and also opening me up to Jonathan's work. It wasn't surprising to discover that each grinder performed well at its intended purposes. The J series grinders and the Q2 hand grinder had the most similarities in grind distributions at a filter grind setting as well as across espresso grind settings. The J-Max and the JX Pro for espresso were really close together, with the J-Max just nudging it out here. And when comparing the J-Max to the K Plus for espresso, the takeaway here is that the J-Max had the bulk of its grind sizes represented in close proximity to each other for a more even distribution of grinds, whereas the K Plus had a few more finer particles displayed at the bottom end, which would indicate more fines were found in the grind. So the J-Max appeared to have the edge on espresso here, as well as being comparable to the K Plus in the filter grind settings as well. Though looking at how the K Plus performs individually across espresso and filter, the trend with the K Plus burrs seems to produce more uniformity in the grinds, with the bulk of the grind sizes concentrated at the top end, and then a sizable differential of particle sizes less than that at the bottom end. Whereas with the J series grinders, all produced even distributions, such as the case with the JX Pro, which was a consistent performer through both of the tests. Now, these bar graphs don't tell the whole story, but they do shed light on a reasonably good performance from the Q2, as well as the K Plus having a slightly different grind distribution pattern. One other thing though I did notice and came away while I was dialing in all of these grinders was the J-Max grinder was way off that setting that I hoped to achieve and seemed to grind much finer than I had calculated. So I did have to go and adjust the setting on the J-Max by 20 or more grind settings coarser just to match these grind settings, which is not a bad thing, but it's simply crazy how much control of grind settings you have with the J-Max compared to these other three grinders. And that's really about it between each of these grinders, unless we start pulling a hen's teeth. Talking quickly about the cleaning routine, they are all super simple, and Easypresso have set it up that way, so there are no tools required in each of these grinders to get deep into the grinder's body for a good clean. And I guess I could continue to pour time into staring at those graphs to discern which of these is truly the best performing grinder, but it really does come back to what each of these grinders is intended for. So to summarize on each of these grinders before I do choose. The Q2 is absolutely a great grinder for traveling or for someone looking for a budget grinder, but you don't want to sacrifice on quality either, as the Q2 has proven to have a really good grind performance, and there is a great range of grinding for all methods, albeit with a little less scope for dialing in. So now the JX Pro in my mind is that new budget espresso grinder, and let me explain that out a little bit. Whilst it's not as affordable as some other hand grinders are, and saying it's budget kind of makes it sound cheap, which it's certainly not. It is a very high performance grinder, and it has all its ducks lined up with a lot of value as a great grinder. What I mean when I say a budget espresso grinder is, I think for under 250 Aussie dollars, it's probably the best performing espresso grinder, automatic or manual. Let's now talk about the K Plus and the J Max, which I find a little bit harder to separate as they each share that grinding range for all brewing methods. Though the J Max is way more precise with its grind settings, I don't know if you need that much precision when you're brewing filter coffee. So let's put it this way. If you are a true espresso connoisseur and that's all you brew, then I would have to recommend the J Max over the K Plus when aiming to hit that sweet spot for espresso. And if you are more into filter coffee, then I believe the unique K burr set on the K Plus brings that edge over the J Max for a tastier filter coffee, where it's producing more uniform grinds and increasing the clarity of the flavor in your cup. And with only one full rotation of the dial, you have all your brew methods. But honestly, I would be pretty stoked with any of these Easypresso grinders. As I travel, I brew espresso more often, but on the rare occasion, I have an Aeropress, a pour over, or even a Mocha Master. So for me, it makes the most sense to have the J Max, but I would equally be happy with the K Plus. And that's it for this comparison. Which one would you choose? And you know the deal, if I've missed anything on any one of these grinders, add it into the comments section down below and we'll get straight back to you, as well as any questions you have on each of these grinders. And as always, thanks for watching to the end of this video, and we'll see you in the next one.